this look like where we left off?
Yeah.
Alright, so we actually, just so you know, I am sending grade sheets home today. We have 3 weeks, and then the 4th week, I don't remember why they said they did this, but like it's the first week in March, we go Monday, Tuesday is for this trimester, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is for the 3rd trimester. So I believe you switched classes on a Wednesday for this trimester.
Don't they usually
Okay.
give us a long weekend?
Yeah, they usually give teachers time to grade stuff, but I don't think we get it this time. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway, from what I see. Alright, so last week, we talked about having special segments in a circle. And for last week, we always had 2 chords. And if you remember, we would take like the red piece of this chord times the blue piece, and then that would equal the green piece times the purple piece. And sometimes it was just easy algebra, sometimes we had to factor, okay? So that's the first rule with this. Now the second rule is when you have 2 secants in a circle. Let me just make sure I'm in the right spot, yeah. Okay, so a secant, if you remember what a secant is, it can be a line, it can be a segment, but it intersects the circle in 2 points. A tangent touches the circle in 1 point, a secant touches in 2 points. So if I look here, I would have it touching here and here, and then AE touches here and here, okay? Now, how we do this is they call this part the external part of the secant. So it's the part of the secant that is outside of the circle, and they take that multiplied by the whole secant, okay? And then the other part is the same thing. They take the external part, which is the part outside of this circle, times the whole thing, okay? Now, if we go down to here, it says find x to the nearest 10th, assume segments that appear to be tangent are tangent. And actually, in these, I think we're always going to have 2 secants. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the external part of that secant, which is 8, and we're going to multiply that by the whole thing, which is 8 plus 2, which is 10. And then we're going to let that equal the external part here, which is x, times the whole thing. Now, when I write that whole thing, I would have to add those, and if I have a choice, I always put the x in front. So when I add this, I would write it as x plus 11, and that's what I would put here too, okay? So I took the external or outside part times the whole equals external or outside times the whole. Now, 8 times 10 is 80, and that equals, and here we're going to distribute. X times x is x squared, x times 11 is 11x, okay? Now, when you have an x squared, an x, and a number, that should tell you that you have to factor it. And when you do that, earlier, what we did is we would always bring the 80 over to the other side, so both your x squared, your x, and your number are on the same side. So this would be x squared plus 11x, and then when I bring that 80 over, it's going to be negative 80, okay? Now, this is one that we're gonna have to factor. If any of you are super good at factoring without using the box and the table, you do not have to use that. But if you still are working at it, then I would suggest that. So the x squared goes here, the negative 80 goes here as well as here, and then the plus 11 goes here. So we want two factors of a negative 80, so that means one's plus, one's minus, that add up to a positive 11. Yes? 16 and a negative 5. Now, when you do this, you would just sit and go like, 80 divided by 2 is 40. Well, if one's positive and one's negative and you add those together, you're not going to get a positive 11. 80 is not divisible by 3. 80 divided by 4 is 20. When you make one of those negative and add them, it's not going to give you 11. And then 5 goes in there 16 times. And then you would look at, if I made one of these negative, could they add to a positive 11? And just for another hint, this is negative, one of them has to be negative, and the one that's going to be negative is going to be the sign of this. So this is positive, that tells you your positive one is going to be your bigger number, okay? If that was negative, your negative 1 would be the 16, okay? Now in here I put 16x, in here I put negative 5x, and then I can start putting outside here what I have. This is x squared, it's x times x. 16x is 16 times x. X times what gives me negative 5x, that's negative 5, and 16 times negative 5 is negative 80. Okay, so what that tells me then down here is I am going to have one of my factors, there's no sign, so I can assume it's plus, is x plus 16. One is x minus 5. And then I set that equal to 0. Now, when we learned factoring back in chapter 7, we talked about the fact that a shortcut way to get from the factored form to your answers is that you can take the opposite of positive 16, so that would be negative 16, and you can take the opposite of negative 5, and that would be a positive 5. Now, when you look at this, okay, x is a distance on that secant. X can't be negative, so that tells us this one does not work, and this is your answer. So always check your negative and make sure it doesn't give you a negative side. If it does, it doesn't work. Okay? All right, let's go to this page then. All right, so if this is 8 and these are congruent, that makes this 8. So it would be 8 times what? Yep, 8 plus 8 is 16 equals 6 times, and I always put the one with the x first when I add. So do you get this could be written as 2x plus 6? Everybody understand that? So this would be 2x plus 6. Now what we're going to do is multiply these two, and I get 144. And then I'm going to distribute here. 6 times 2x is 12x. 6 times 6 is 36. Okay? And then I'm just going to solve. Subtract 36. And I get 12x equals, is that 108? Divide by 12. And x is that 6? No,
9.
Thank you. 9. Whoops. Okay, and that is your answer there. All right, so now if we look at this one, yeah.
8 times 16 is 128.
What if you did
Look
1
at the end. 8 times
Oh, you're
16
saying right here.
is 128, so then minus 36 is 92, and then x should be like 7.6 repeated.
Thank you. Okay, so this was 8 times 16, which was,
128.
okay, sorry, and then this would be 92, and then divide by 12, which would give us,
7.6.
okay, thank you. All right. Now, if I look at this one, again, what we're doing is we're taking that outside part, which is 6, times the whole thing. And when I add those, I always put the x in front. So I'd write this as 4x plus 6 equals, and then I have 6 times the whole thing. Now again, when I add that, I would do the x in front, so I'd go x plus, what do you think it would be? X plus 3 plus 6 would be x plus 9, okay? So now on that, I'd have 6 times the whole thing is x plus 9. So then I distribute. 6 times 4x is 24x. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times x is 6x. And 6 times 9 is 54. Then I'm going to subtract 6x. 24x minus 6x is 18x plus 36 equals 54. Then I'm going to subtract 36. So then I get 18x equals 18. And x is 1. Is that what you guys got? Okay. All right. Now, if we look at this last problem, okay. Now here, they're looking for RS, and RS is this, and it doesn't have anything there. So what I'm gonna do is let that be X, okay? So now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this X times this whole thing, which would be X plus 3, equals this 2 times what do you think? 2 plus 12, right? Which is 14. Do you guys get that? So it's 2 plus 12, which is 14. Now, if I go and distribute here, I'm going to get x squared plus 3x equals 28. And this is one that has an x squared, an x, and a number, so I have to factor it. So to do that, I'm going to bring the 28 over, and it's going to be minus 28 equals 0. Okay, now I have x squared, I'm going to put that here. Negative 28 is here and here. And then this is 3. Okay, now what I do there is I look at what two numbers multiplied give me a negative 28 and add up to a positive 3.
7 and
Yes, very good. So it's gonna be 7 times a negative 4 is negative 28, and 7 plus a negative 4 is 3. So one of these is 7x, one is negative 4x. And then if that's x squared, it's gonna be x times x. 7x, this is 7. X times what gives me negative 4x, that's negative 4. So one of my factors is gonna be x plus 7. The other one is going to be x minus 4. So for this, the opposite of a plus 7 is a negative 7. And for here, the opposite of negative 4 is 4. X is part of the problem. It can't be negative, so our answer is 4. Does everybody get that? Okay, so now you guys are gonna go to that same sheet as last week. But this time when you do it, just write section 9-8 worksheet day 2. And then you'll do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 problems, okay? So 9, 8 worksheet day 2, and those are the problems you're doing.
Are those both problems or those?
Those are worksheets.
Oh, so it's also in the worksheet what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, did I have it in? Yes. Schoology? That sounds fun.